Hey guys, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldog fans. I decided to go back to black for the Gator Hater t-shirt today. I'll shift back to red again tomorrow, but you kind of want to give a little love to the black t-shirt here as well. But one thing is for sure, we're all Gator haters getting ready for the game on Saturday. We're glad to have you with us. Busy show for us. Brad Nessler later on, he'll call the game for CBS. We'll have him here on the program today. Seth Emerson, you'll hear me mention Seth. Seth's going to appear in the audio version of the show. We had to pre-record with Seth today, so he's audio only today, but that's room for more comments and a whole lot more fun as DawgNation Daily gets ready to begin right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
In preparations for the game against Georgia on Saturday, Jim McElwain met with the media on Wednesday, the Florida coach, and I would dare say that he had one of the strangest exchanges with reporters I can remember any SEC coach having in quite some time. And I'm not quite sure what it means for the game against Georgia on Saturday, but as I've been kind of talking about and pointing out throughout the week here, there is a stark contrast right now with the way that Georgia seems to be going about its business in preparation for the game and the way that at least publicly Florida seems to be going about its business in preparation for the game here as well. We'll kind of get into some of that and talk about a lot of that on the program here today. Let me start with this. And listen, this is just a joke. He's not serious when he says this. This is just something that McElwain does for fun here. But he's asked the question that everybody wants to know, and every reporter tries to phrase in a way that he'll get an answer. But when you hear it out loud, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to answer that. You know, McElwain was asked, hey, can you tell me where Georgia's weak? Can you tell me where Georgia would appear to have some vulnerabilities, where you might be able to attack the dogs? And McElwain kind of has a funny answer, but like a lot of funny things, sometimes truth is hidden in humor, and maybe here from Jim McElwain is an example of some truth actually being hidden in something McElwain said trying to be humorous. Here he is.
I'm not going to give Kirby the game plan, but I'll say this: they are perfect. How's that? They got nothing to work on, but I think the big thing there is he's got him playing with a belief. He's really, that's something that you really see him doing, and I know they're on the revenge tour of whatever they had a year ago, and we're one of those pieces, so it should make for a fun game.
Now, listen, he's being sarcastic when he says that, but every Georgia fan does like the idea of thinking, yeah, you know what, UGA is on a revenge tour, and Florida really is the next sort of pillar to fall in that revenge tour as Georgia goes and gets revenge for all the teams that beat it in 2016, or in the case of Florida, all the wins that the Gators have been compiling here over the course of the last 3 decades. Now, McElwain's not being serious when he says that, but there is a degree to which Georgia fans hope that's what's going on here. There is a degree to which the Georgia fans are certainly hopeful that Georgia will get a measure of revenge against Florida on Saturday. And obviously, he says all of that as sort of a setup to act like Florida's got no chance against Georgia on Saturday. And as he said, Georgia should just think of themselves as being perfect and not think of themselves as having anything to work on. But one of the things that I think makes these kinds of exchanges nice for Georgia fans, even though McElwain's trying to be funny, is that there is a degree to which that Georgia is sort of, at least appearingly, impervious to any kind of thought about let's go out and get revenge against Florida, or any kind of thought about, hey, let's look ahead to the first college football playoff ranking that comes out on Tuesday, or really any kind of that kind of stuff. Georgia just would not seem to be the kind of program right now that's falling into that trap. And in some cases, this may be myth-making, and in some cases, this may be just sort of constructing a narrative where maybe a narrative doesn't exist. You'll actually hear me talk to Seth Emerson about that a little later on today's program. But there is also an element of that just sort of feels true. I saw a quote from Sony Michel, the Georgia running back. 24/7 Sports had it. That's where I read it. May have been everywhere. Maybe on DawgNation.com as well. I just happened to see it there, where he said, it doesn't even feel like we're an undefeated team right now. It feels like we're the kind of team that is just going to keep going out there and plugging. We practice so hard, and the coaches are on us so much at practice. It doesn't even feel like we're undefeated. And I would say the same thing. Yeah, after the game on Saturday, maybe the Georgia players will look back on the game and say, you know what, it was a measure of revenge. And you know what, this was for the guys that have been in this program that haven't won, or the guys in the history of this program that didn't win as much against Florida as they'd like to. But I don't gather that's the mindset that Georgia has going into the game on Saturday. I think that's kind of a nice thing to see. But as I mentioned a moment ago, this is not just McElwain talking about Georgia here. it was also another sort of strange exchange with the media with Jim McElwain on a number of issues. We'll get to the weird death threat stuff in a moment, but let me start with this. Here on DawgNation Daily this week, we've had a little bit of fun with the fact that Jim McElwain seems to just let his players kind of go out and talk whatever trash they want to talk about Georgia or any other opponent leading up to the game. And McElwain on Wednesday was asked, hey, do you have any kind of problem with any of this kind of stuff? Here's kind of the interesting exchange McElwain had with a reporter on that subject.
Some of them were pretty confident, maybe even borderline cocky. You okay with that? Some bulletin board material, maybe some trash talk, whatever you want to call it.
I would hope they're confident. You know, they've had good preparation and really knowing that you're prepared to go and play. You know, I see it as they're excited as well. And then we'll find out on Saturday.
Ryan,
and I'm sure he's got it all up.
Oh, sure.
So, you know, so there's no doubt.
Did you tone it down? Did you tell him to tone it down after Monday? Or
No, they have their right.
It's the part there at the end that I find so bizarre, and maybe, you know, if you're not a Georgia fan or you don't have a dog in this fight, maybe you find it refreshing that McElwain says my players have a right to go out and say what they want to say. This is a free country. I'm going to give them free speech. And maybe if you're a Gator guy and you're sitting here in this room with me right now, you might say, hey, listen, that helps McElwain on the recruiting trail. Players want to come to that program and play for Jim McElwain because he's not going to try to muzzle them with what they say to the media. He's not going to sort of force them to kind of become some sort of personality they're not. He's going to allow them to be free and express themselves and be who they are, because pretty clearly a lot of other SEC teams don't really want to do that. But it is just shocking how outside the norm that McElwain and Florida are compared to the rest of the SEC. In this regard, McElwain saying, no, my guys are free to say whatever they want to say, and I hope that I hope that they are confident. I hope that is the way they feel. That is not the viewpoint that almost any other SEC coach would take on this. And listen, it'd be one thing, as we talked about yesterday, if Florida was some sort of schoolyard bully who was just sort of shoving everybody around. But really, what Florida has kind of been more as of late is more like a LeVar Ball type guy. You know him, the dad of the NBA player Lonzo Ball, who's always walking around bragging about everything that his son could do or he could do. And yet, in the case of LeVar Ball, almost all his braggadocious things either didn't come true in the past or have no chance of coming true in the present. I mean, it seems like that's kind of where Florida is right now. They're talking a lot of trash about things they're going to do, but in the games they talk trash, they almost never seem to win. And obviously Georgia fans hope that's true again on Saturday as well. And frankly, I think that the trash talk from the Gator side this week has been just one of the things that sort of energized and kind of breathed new life into this rivalry, a game that Georgia already wants to win, and just sort of extra fuel and extra motivation to truly make DawgNation Gator haters, and from that standpoint, it's probably not such a bad thing. There's actually one more thing I want you to hear from Jim McElwain, though, as well, and this is kind of on a more serious subject. And, it speaks once again to the level of preparation that Georgia has had and is having right now, getting guys healthy, getting guys focused, ready to go in and dominate this football game. And Florida, who's kind of spent the week sort of, circling the drain, going around in circles at least would seem to be the case here, including the allegations of death threats from Jim McElwain earlier in the week that was almost immediately met with suspicion by media members, maybe even his own employer. And I want you to hear this, and I want you to really pay attention to just how weird all of this is. Jim McElwain's asked a direct question. Did somebody threaten you and your family? And listen to how not direct McElwain's answer is. And after the clip, the thing that we're left to wonder is there any other way to interpret this other than a negative way for Jim McElwain? Here is a strange moment from Wednesday.
Jim, were you and your family directly threatened, and when was it?
Sure. Obviously I understand that's the news. It goes with the territory. And you know what? That's it's hard to leave sometimes, and yet, how much I care about this program, these players. Obviously, everything that goes in with it, but ultimately allowing, one or two, and who knows even who it was, right? You can't, you don't know. It's anonymous, and so that is what it is, and I'm confident we're all right.
Ought to be a simple yes or no answer, and McElwain gives you a million words. None of those were yes, this did actually happen, which just sort of speaks to the contrast that exists between the Dogs and the Gators right now. One program has given its fans a million reasons to be proud thus far in the 2017 season. The other program has given its fans probably reasons to be embarrassed. That doesn't dictate what's going to happen on Saturday. Georgia's still got to go out and win the game, but Dog fans have never been more motivated than they are right now to actually go out and see that take place. Before I move on to the program, let me also take a moment to look back to the past for a moment. Our Roxy Jackson here at DawgNation.com had a chance to catch up this week with the former legendary coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, Vince Dooley, who, as you might imagine, when asked about how he thought the cocktail party was going to play out on Saturday, well, he likes the Dogs. Here's Roxy with Vince Dooley.
I think Georgia will win the ball game, yeah, but they'll be challenged. I mean, Florida's defense is good. They'll play hard, but I think we're better, and I think the spirit is just as well as good. So I think we'll win despite the fact that Florida will be at its best. I think.
And then a little more from Coach Dooley. What was his best memory of the game against the Florida Gators? Well, if you're a longtime Georgia fan, you can probably guess this one as well, thinking all the way back to Ballou to Lindsey Scott in 1980.
Well, there's a lot of them, but probably the 80 season when we had a play called Buck Ballou to Lindsey Scott, which was a play that won the game when it looked like it was going to be lost, which eventually led to the national championship. So that would be the best.
So good memories there for Georgia fans with Vince Dooley back in 1980, and certainly there's a thought that a lot more of those memories can be added in the years ahead under Kirby Smart, and maybe some of those can begin as soon as this Saturday. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's good to have you with us on the program, no matter how you may be getting to us, whether it's on Facebook Live. Of course, we're there for you each and every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the DawgNation Facebook page. We're also on the radio at noon every day on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and in podcast form at the world-famous DawgNation.com. Post the show for you on iTunes and pretty much wherever podcasts are found. We'll try to make DawgNation Daily really easy for you to find. And we are now down to very small numbers for our Gator Hater Countdown. Georgia, Florida, the game we've been talking about all week long and all year long here on DawgNation Daily, just 2 days away. We are excited about that. We got a big show planned for you tomorrow as we count down the final day before the game. And, of course, it's great to have you on DawgNation Daily to do that. And if you're going to the game, hope you be with us for our DawgNation Invasion to Jacksonville and our big tailgate that starts at 10 a.m. right there at the touchdown lot off Bryan Street near Gate 6 there. We're going to be there starting at 10 a.m. on Saturday. We'll have a Dixie Vodka tasting bar going on for you there for those who are 21 and up. We'll have television set up. Jeff Sintel and I are going to be watching all the games with you on those big screens, hanging out, talking some Georgia football. And while supplies last, we have our red Gator Hater t-shirts. Now, I'm wearing the black today if you're watching on Facebook Live, but I'll be wearing the red again tomorrow and with you on Saturday as we give a whole bunch of those away on Saturday at our DawgNation Invasion tailgate. Also, if you're going to be in Jacksonville, make plans to join us on Friday night for a big event. It's at Dos Gatos, which is downtown Jacksonville. That's 123 East Forsyth Street in Jacksonville. We're going to be hanging out starting at 8 p.m. with the folks from Dixie Vodka there. So if you're in Jacksonville on Friday night looking for sort of a pregame to the cocktail party, come on by and hanging out with us. Dixie Vodka, DawgNation there at Dos Gatos Restaurant in Jacksonville, 123 East Forsyth Street. It'll be Friday starting at 8 p.m. there for that. So if you're going to be doing that, we'd love to drink a little Dixie Vodka with you kind of leading into the cocktail party on Saturday. We've got current CBS broadcaster, the guy doing the play-by-play for Georgia, Florida on Saturday, Brad Nessler on the program in just a few minutes. We'll hear from Seth Emerson here as well. But before any of that, let me squeeze in some of our Gator Hater roll call here. Now, we've been really behind in terms of getting all these out. Many of you have been great about sending in your messages. We'll do as many of these as we can here today and then do some more shouts out on the final day tomorrow. But you've been reaching out to me at DawgNation Daily on Twitter, showing me that you're just as big of a Gator Hater as I am, and we'll show you some of these on social media right now that have been sent in. Give some folks a chance to say hello, including John on Twitter, who said, I try to avoid agreeing with you, but now I'm 100% in agreement with your assessment of the Florida rivalry. Let's go out there and beat them on Saturday. John says it's always nice to convert a Gator hater. I like at Dig 2294 on Twitter, who gives you the Florida F logo with the crying Jordan face kind of hidden in there. Pretty good stuff from Dig on Twitter. We'll show you a couple more. Steve O'Mac kind of making fun of the death threat allegations by Jim McElwain with the death by chocolate ice cream. Steve O says, eat the ice cream or else. KN Dog 2 on Twitter showing the black Gatorhater t-shirt. KN Dog, we appreciate that. She says, got mine, and we certainly appreciate that, Kate. Thanks so much. Scott Barman's got a great response to the Florida trash talk from earlier this week. He says, some talk trash, we take it out, go Georgia. Terrific meme there from Scott, who's a terrific DawgNation reader and DawgNation Daily listener and viewer. Scott Crisler's got the Christmas Story, the bunny kid, and says that outfit's still better looking than the uniforms that Florida wore the other day. Pretty funny stuff from Scott. Coach E17 on Twitter, since it's a trophy here of, I guess, maybe a little bit of a golf tournament he has with his friends, or some sort of championship they have going on. It's their Gatorhater Championship, and that resides with DawgNation right now, so that's really good stuff to see. We'll show you some more of these later on in the week here on DawgNation Daily, but really good stuff there. You can continue to send those in at DawgNation Daily and on Twitter, and we'll try to hit some more of those before we are done with the week. Really fun show for us tomorrow. But for now, though, let's get ready to hear Brad Nessler in just a moment, CBS broadcaster, and Seth Emerson right now taking a look at everything going on with the game against the Dogs and the Gators on Saturday. It's great to have you with us here on DawgNation Daily. And, of course, for those of you watching on video, if you're just joining us, what I told our audience before you came in on the broadcast was that we had to pre-record Seth today. Seth not going to be appearing on the video portion of the show. He's going to be audio only, so you can check out the podcast, or if you're in the Athens area, you can listen on the radio. You can hear everything with Seth Emerson. We had a really good conversation. We kind of got into a little bit about how Georgia got to this point, undefeated for the first time going into the Florida game since 2005, the roster management that Kirby Smart's done, the things at practice that he's done. That's really good stuff with Seth Emerson. We'll do all that with you coming up here in just a moment. Because no Seth on video, it will give us extra time for comments on today's show. I think that's going to be a really fun thing to do. Your chance to sort of react to anything you want with the Georgia program right now. We'll sort of spread our wings here and do a little bit more of that. And we'll also have Brad Nessler coming up 35 minutes after the hour. We'll talk to the guy calling the game for CBS here on DawgNation Daily. So why don't we do this? Let's get ready to move on with our broadcast. Let's go ahead and do the SEC through. Let's sort of look around at some of the other stories in the SEC, and then we'll get back to some UGA talk. And, of course, it's good to have you with us on the program here today.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Always fun having Seth Emerson on DawgNation Daily. Appreciate his time. And as we get ready to transition here to our SEC Through, I'll remind you that you can check out AT&T SEC Country Live coming up 3 p.m. Eastern Time today on the SEC Country Facebook page. We'll talk about all the big SEC stories there on that program. And as we're thinking about Saturday and thinking about the DawgNation invasion to Jacksonville, don't forget, DawgNation invasion to Jacksonville brought to you in part by our friends at Kroger. Now, we'll all think about the cocktail party this weekend, but then as soon as you get back into town or as soon as that game's over, the next thing that may be on your family's schedule, in addition to our big tailgate on that Saturday, may be Halloween. And listen, when you start thinking about that, you got to make sure you got the candy, you got to make sure you got the decorations, you got to make sure everything you got to have, and that's why Kroger's the place you want to be to think about all of that kind of stuff. I told you the other day, my family's already stocked up at Kroger on all of our Halloween stuff. We got 2 big shopping carts full of Halloween stuff, and you got 2 young kids. That's just what they like to do, and so that's what we did. It's going to be at Kroger, and if you want a quick, convenient way to get everything that you need from Kroger for Halloween, anything else, check out Kroger Click List online at Kroger.com. You can find out more about that. We appreciate Kroger bringing the DawgNation invasion to you. Bad news and big news coming out of Tennessee, as yesterday afternoon we find out that star running back John Kelly and former 4-star recruit linebacker Will Ignat, both in the car together, cited for marijuana, possession, drug paraphernalia, and now both Kelly and Ignat. Kelly's the guy that matters most because Ignat, while he may have a big career at some point in time, for now is just a third-string linebacker. But Kelly's the star player on this team, and he's not going to play on Saturday against Kentucky for the Vols. And, my point on this is I don't know that you can directly blame Butch Jones for Kelly and Ignat getting in trouble here. It seems a little tough to kind of draw that straight line from one to the other. But Butch Jones is going to be blamed for this. And for a guy in Butch Jones who's kind of hanging on by a string in terms of his employment at Tennessee, I think this is the kind of thing that just runs the risk of sort of severing that tie for him even more. It's just another bad headline for John Curry to deal with here. And Curry seems to sort of biased in favor of trying to find a way to keep Butch Jones. But the Kelly arrest, I think, actually makes it a little tougher to do that. So Tennessee, without its best offensive player for the game against Kentucky, already a point spread underdog, and winning that game just became a lot tougher. Thought that Marcus Spears on the SEC Network had something interesting to say about Georgia and its competition for the SEC East. Spears said, and we'll talk more about this on AT&T SEC Country Live today, that when he looks at the landscape in the SEC East, it's actually South Carolina, more so than this week's opponent, Florida. Obviously, they're just 3-3 now with a couple of conference losses. More so than anybody else, it's South Carolina who's the chief competition for Georgia. And Dog fans will obviously remember and know that it's that South Carolina game that looms the week after Florida, coming back to Athens for that CBS 3:30 start. I don't think Georgia's going to run the risk of overlooking anybody, but what Spears' words indicate is there's no room for hangover, no time for hangover coming after the Florida game, because Spears says Georgia's going to face a South Carolina team that Will Muschamp's kind of getting something out of right now. And I do think that Muschamp deserves credit for the job that he's done with the Gamecocks so far this year. Eventually, he's going to have a pretty good roster there because Muschamp's a pretty good recruiter. He proved that at Florida. He's going to cut from the same cloth as Kirby Smart. You expect him to find players. He found a couple last year, may even take a few this year that Georgia would like to have. Rick Sandage comes to mind, for instance. But those guys aren't on campus yet, at least for the most part. You do have Jamias Williams there, but you don't have a lot of elite recruits there for South Carolina yet. You get some stuff out of Jake Bentley. They've overcome the Debo Samuel injury, and so far South Carolina is actually doing pretty well. And I do think Spears' words are kind of a nice reminder that the Florida game may be the one that I'm obsessed over, but once it's over, the next one's actually pretty big too. So I'm glad that Marcus Spears said what he said. And if you want to look ahead a little further, Danny Sheridan goes on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday. Now, a lot of you don't know who Danny Sheridan is, but back in like the 80s and 90s, Sheridan was pretty famous as an odds maker. There's odds makers everywhere now. Sheridan at one point, though, was sort of the most well-known guy, sort of putting point spreads out there. I think he was putting them out there for USA Today. That's one of the reasons why he kind of got a big name for himself. And he just swears spread underdog in November when it goes to Auburn. This also echoes what the Westgate in Las Vegas said. The Vegas Superbook, as it's called, also had Georgia the other day as a 3-point underdog to Auburn. So Georgia undefeated. Earlier in our show, we played you a clip of Jim McElwain saying the Dogs were on a revenge tour and a perfect team right now, but at least not in the eyes of Vegas necessarily. Vegas, for the moment, still thinks that road trip to the Plains, Jordan-Hare Stadium against Auburn, is one that could be a challenge for Georgia. Vegas and Danny Sheridan say Georgia going to be a point spread underdog there. One more quick story to get to for the SEC through. Peter Burns on Twitter, another SEC Network guy, saying, what if Georgia beats Florida on Saturday and Ohio State beats Penn State? Both those things are likely to happen. Both those teams are point spread favorite. If it does, Burns says that he thinks that both those teams would leapfrog Alabama in the college football playoff poll on Tuesday, and Bam would actually be number 3 when the first poll comes out. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of weight and value to the first poll, but it's kind of interesting to hear the guesswork going on there of exactly how that could play out on Tuesday. Interesting stuff. We'll make that your SEC through. All right. Here on DawgNation Daily, while we're on the video portion of the show, we're going to have Brad Nessler in a little bit. We'll do some stuff with him. A little bit different broadcast for us today if you're just joining us. We had to pre-record Seth Emerson. That's audio only, so we kind of moved up the rest of the broadcast so we can make some room for some more comments. And the good news is we'll have plenty of time to do that now, both before we get back into the regular broadcast and then after that's over as well, to give you a chance to kind of opine about anything that you want to when it comes to Georgia football. So let me kind of dive into my comments here. We'll kind of get ready to get going, and we'll have a bunch of these here on the program today. And, of course, it is great to have you with us, and hope you enjoyed the Black Gator Hater today. I'll have the red again on tomorrow. Keith Jordan says keep chopping, and that's one of those things that's true no matter what. And I think Keith brings up a good point about that. Analyst talks up South Carolina, keep chopping wood. Analysts say that Georgia's going to be an underdog to Auburn, keep chopping that wood. Florida says what it's going to say. Georgia fans would say keep chopping that wood. And that's the mindset this team's tried to adopt and use to its advantage all season long, and my guess is that's exactly what they will continue to do. Hope Smith says, home team does not always get 3 points. Tennessee didn't get a single point on us this year, obviously referencing the fact that one of the reasons why Georgia might be a point spread underdog to Auburn is because Auburn will be given the advantage, at least the viewpoint of advantage of playing the game at home, and Hope brings up a good point. Hank Watson says, tell anyone that can't watch the game to download the CBS Sports app and watch it live on there. That is a good point. Now, the people that work with me every day here on our program will tell you I'm the least technically savvy person in the world. I actually think I do have the CBS Sports app on my phone, but I actually don't even really hardly know how to use it. But, yeah, that's right. That CBS Sports app, I know that it's pretty good. Mike Jackson says to make a prediction about the game for Saturday, So here's my, and I don't normally give official predictions necessarily because the truth is I'm going to be wrong as much as I'm going to be right. But if I had to guess how the game's going to unfold on Saturday, I think the point spread feels about right. Georgia has a 2-touchdown winner. That feels about the way this game's going to unfold. But here's the question. How do you get to that 2-touchdown margin? My guess is that Florida, especially up front defensively, might be good enough to hang around in this game for a while. And it may be close at halftime, and it may still be close in the third quarter. But I thought that Jeff Sintel, who will be with us in the show obviously tomorrow, I thought that Jeff brought up a really good point when we did our Marlowe's Brookhaven broadcast on Tuesday. That there's a size advantage for the Georgia offensive line against the Florida defensive line. Florida can kind of run a lot of bodies in there, even with the shared injury. They're still bringing in a lot of bodies on that defensive line. But in generally speaking, they are not as big as some of the guys that Georgia's playing on the offensive line. That Georgia offensive line is getting better. Gilliard's holding his own now as a guard. Solomon Kinley, as a redshirt freshman, has been strong all year long when he's been healthy. Kendall Baker's doing fine at the left guard position. The tackles are, of course, I think having really good seasons. Georgia's offensive line is getting better. And they're also big. Isaiah Wynn's not the biggest left tackle, but the rest of the group's pretty big, all things considered. And the size that group brings to the table over the course of the game is just going to lean on Florida, wear Florida down. And that's in that sort of fourth quarter, that wood chopping time, to use the phrase that Kirby Smart's used before. That's when I think you may see the Georgia advantage come to bear there. And so I think it's a 2-touchdown or so win for Georgia that maybe doesn't become a comfortable, safe lead until the fourth quarter. DeMayer says our secondary has to communicate. And, there's an element of that's true. I mean, I think what we said the other day about the secondary is something that still feels more true to me, which is, the secondary can work on its communication skills. They can work on whatever they want to work on, but you're still talking about an overall talent profile for the secondary that's just different than Georgia's other position groups. You're still talking about a group that's not as loaded as the linebacker core is, not as loaded as the defensive line core is. And you better believe that Florida thinks it can exploit that and challenge that. It may not work. It didn't work for Tennessee, which tried it. It didn't really work for Notre Dame, which tried it, although that game was close. Notre Dame never got that fast of its game plan off and running that day. I think even Mississippi State wanted to try it and challenge DeAndre Baker and failed. That's what Florida's going to try to do on Saturday. And earlier this year, when teams did that, the front seven for Georgia just didn't give much of an opportunity to actually get those long passes off. I think you've seen, and y'all know I'm not an X's and O's expert. I don't pretend to be a former coach here, but I think you've seen as of late a little more in the way of like max protect type stuff where, teams are just going to do whatever they can to block Georgia's front seven as long as they can. And in the case of Missouri, that gave Drew Lock just enough time to throw. How do you compare the Missouri wide receivers to the Florida wide receivers? I think the answer to that question depends on just how healthy Tyree Cleveland is. Larry Young says, I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and would like to listen to the Georgia football broadcast for the game, but can't seem to get any on iHeartRadio. Anyone have any advice? So, Larry, I don't work for the official radio broadcast, but I will tell you that almost all those things are restricted by the rights holder agreement, that you can't listen to the streaming version of the radio broadcast. Georgia may sell you one, but you're not going to be able to listen to it for free. Hank Watson says, anyone that doesn't think having a coach that's an alum is important, just look at the Florida years under Spurrier. Georgia beat him during the Heisman year, went 11-1 when he was the head coach. Hank, I think that's a really interesting point. I don't know for sure that Smart being an alumnus makes him a better coach for Georgia, but I do think it makes winning more fun. Let me expound upon that a little bit. If Smart being an alumnus made him a better coach, that means that you would limit the pool of potential replacements for Smart to only guys who had also gone to Georgia. Now, obviously, you hope that you're not spending and having that conversation for another long, long time into the future. But think about when Mark Richt left. Kirby Smart was an attractive candidate, but it's not only because he was an alumnus. It was because he was an alumnus who also had other good coaching credentials. So I don't know that being a graduate of a university makes you better at being a coach for that team, but it does make, I think, the winning part of this more fun. And it does make the messages more authentic. I mean, we know this. We don't have to be super cynical here, but let's admit, coaches are going to say whatever they feel like they need to say to get their team ready to play. So Steve Spurrier, when he took the Florida job back in 1990, there is the legend of him saying, this team is not going to lose to Georgia anymore. I lost to Georgia, and it was hard on me and embarrassing for me, and we're going to fix that as a coach. And for him, let's give him credit. It actually worked out the way that he said it was going to. And if Kirby Smart is saying something similar to that to his team right now, That's just kind of a cool story. It's kind of a nice message. But, there are a lot of things about Kirby Smart that make him a really good coach for Georgia. I don't know that the diploma that hangs on his wall impacts that as much as we'd like for it to, but it is really nice to see one of your own guys. And for those people who've been around the program for a long time as fans or alumni themselves, he's one of your own guys. Man, he certainly makes it fun because he does understand that. And it's not just the fact that he graduated from Georgia, but he understands the state of Georgia. And it's that part of this thing that may actually be an underrated aspect of why Smart's having success. Think about Jim McElwain for a moment. During the first segment of our broadcast, and we'll get back to our regular broadcast in a moment, but during the first segment of our broadcast, we played some audio from Jim McElwain, who always just sort of sounds weird and out of place to me. He's not a Southern guy. He's in the state of Florida, but he doesn't. Does he understand Florida? I mean, he's been around the SEC. He was at Alabama, but he was only there for a brief window of time. Then he's back at Colorado State. This is not a Southerner by trade, where he grew up in Montana. He's kind of sort of a Northwest guy. He spent some time in Fort Collins, Colorado. Does he understand the mental makeup of his fan base, of his important boosters? Does he understand those guys? I don't know that he does. There's certainly evidence to the contrary. But Kirby Smart, in addition to the fact that he graduated from Georgia, sort of understands the mindset, the makeup of Georgia fans. And, you see these little snippets of video that come out from time to time of him kind of sort of in those off-the-record moments with recruits. He's comfortable in his own skin in that moment because, these are the guys that not only, he's coaches now, but he sort of grew up coaching way back at Valdosta State and grew up playing with way back in Bainbridge. This is a guy that just sort of gets the Georgia fan, Georgia high school player. This guy not only has UGA in his blood, but he's got the state of Georgia in his blood. And it's actually that sort of geographic connection to Georgia that may actually benefit him as much as the diploma that hangs on the wall. Lisa Brasher says, I think there's a lot of motivation to win this game because the seniors have not beaten the Gators yet. Chubb will have these guys ready. Just look in the UT game. Go Dogs. I think Lisa brings up a good point. We talked about that really with a couple different people this week that those seniors, that leadership for Georgia, be it Chubb, be it Michelle, be it Bellamy, be it Carter, they are here to kind of get this done, to do for this program what has not been done yet. Win that game against Florida. There was the talk of the unfinished business. There was the talk of kind of taking this program places that it had not been. At least the players on this team had not been. Whether that be a championship or even a rivalry win. I think Lisa brings up a good point that these Georgia seniors like to see that get done. All right, we'll have more of your comments coming up. Let's get back to our broadcast. And now let's welcome in Brad Nessler, who's going to call the game for CBS on Saturday, 3:30. And, of course, this is a game that's been on CBS for a number of years. And I guess, Mr. Nessler, this will be your first time getting to call this game as a member of the CBS broadcast team. But I'm sure you're just as excited about this as I would imagine you are. It's quite the backdrop for college football, is it not?
Sure is, Brandon. And, I've probably seen every one of these games, or the majority of them, in the last 3 or 4 decades, having lived around here, but never done one of these before. Been to the game a couple of times when I was doing the Falcons way back in the day, and we either had Dolphin or Bucks games the next day, something like that, so made a pit stop in Jacksonville to see the game. So from the press box standpoint, my first time, and obviously it's a huge game for Georgia, and it's a big game for Florida too, but the bigger for Georgia right now.
And I guess, not just as a CBS employee, but also as a resident of the South, how important is it for you to see this game stay in Jacksonville? Obviously, it's one of the few games that CBS will tell you before the year even begins that they're going to put this thing on the Saturday that it's played. I mean, how much does the neutral site aspect of this sort of add to the magnitude of the game, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's a lot of fun for the fans, obviously, and the people that get the opportunity to go and spend a whole weekend, in that part of the country or wherever they might have a condo and that type of thing. And, I know we're not supposed to call it outdoor cocktail party anymore, but let's say it's the world's biggest outdoor reception, or to put it that way. That's the part I remember about going to the game, is just seeing the fans and how much fun they were having before and after the game. And I hope to partake in that a little bit. I get to the game about 3 hours early, and I usually go around to a few tailgates or whatever and just surprise people, ask them if I can eat some of their food, and they look at me like, who's the guy with the tie on? That doesn't make any sense. I just think it's a great atmosphere. I hope it stays that way. I know, there's been talk at times that making it a home-and-home deal, but it's pretty cool there.
you saw Georgia in person earlier in the season, seen them on film a lot. I mean, what do you think about Georgia at this point in the year? How impressed are you with them, especially compared to some of these national contenders that all of a sudden Georgia's being mentioned in the same breath with?
I think they belong there, Brandon. I think last time I talked to you, we were still thinking about what would happen if Jake Fromm had to throw the ball. Didn't really have to throw the ball against Missouri, but showed that he can, and I guess that was my biggest question. I think everything else fits into place pretty much as far as great ground game, defense is really solid, pretty good special teams, and it was just a matter of if they had to come from behind, which they really haven't had to do that yet. But I think Jake's come of age as a quarterback and playing great football right now. So, this is one of those weird things, though. How many times has Georgia been in this situation? Most recently, I guess 3 years ago when they were 6-1, and I think Florida was 3-3 at that time, and everybody said, "Wow, they're just going to go and blow Florida's doors off," and that didn't work out so well. So there's a lot of football left, and when you really look at the rest of the Georgia schedule, just because almost every one of those games is a rivalry to some degree, they still have a lot of work to do, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point to bring up. But if you look at the side-by-side comparison between Georgia and the team you saw last Saturday, Alabama, there's still an element to me that where I'll say, Alabama is solid almost every single position group in a way that Georgia may still be trying to round out its roster. I mean, have you kind of done the thing in your mind where you compare Georgia side-by-side to Alabama yet? Obviously, that's a showdown that could be looming for the SEC championship game.
Yeah, well, everybody hopes that right now, the way things are going. They stack up really evenly, I think. This time a year ago, I probably wouldn't have said that. And when you go to an Alabama practice, and, I looked at Gary last Thursday, and I said, their small guys are even big. And that's just the way they're built. I mean, it's unbelievable. And, they're so deep, especially in the backfield. You look at Georgia's backfield, and you go, how can it be any deeper? Well, Alabama's isn't at least one or two more players deeper. That's just how good they are, just every position. I mean, they have flaws. They've had trouble with punt returns and things like that. But, they're pretty solid in every capacity. And their backup quarterback could play for anybody. In fact, he'd be starting for Alabama if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts. So when you're deep enough that your second quarterback could play anyplace else in the league, anyplace else and maybe in the country, that shows how good you are. Now, is Georgia there yet? They're really close, I think. I mean, I really do. I think they stack up beautifully. It would be nice if it got to that point. And obviously, from our standpoint, if they were both undefeated the first weekend of December at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we'd take it.
So Saturday, 3:30 p.m. is the time. Brad Nessler, Gary Daniels, and Allie LaForce on the sideline. It is a great backdrop for college football, and it's a game that, whether you're going to the game or not, everyone's got circled. We'll look forward to the CBS call, and Brad, we'll look forward to having you here on DawgNation Daily again very soon.
You got it, Brandon. Good talking to you, buddy.
Good stuff there from Brad Nessler here on DawgNation Daily, and look forward to that call on CBS with him on Saturday. All right, let me close out with this. So how many of you have seen the commercial that Jeff Sintel and I have shot for Kroger? It's at DawgNation.com right now. We may have to break this thing down tomorrow. The people in the room, have y'all seen it yet? Thumbs up, thumbs down, be honest. Michael, thumbs up, thumbs down, be honest. Have you really seen it? You don't seem very convinced. I feel like we did okay. I feel like there's some moments towards the end where maybe I sort of forced the acting here a little bit. And obviously the Kroger message is perfect. We do believe Kroger Click List is an awesome, awesome spot to really make grocery shopping more convenient than it's ever been before. And I think it's great that Kroger's doing that. But while that's great, maybe my acting skills, maybe not so great. And there's the one moment where I sort of lean down. You see my bald head right there in the camera. We'll break this down some more tomorrow. I hope you'll be with us. It's DawgNation Daily. And for those of you who are with us on the video version of the show right now, Terry Crews says the video was funny. Okay, good. Darian Ford says it wasn't bad. Tyler Herring bringing up the veggie pizza in the wrestling magazines. Yeah, listen, you have to be kind of plugged into a DawgNation Daily to get that inside joke. Obviously, Jeff's talked a lot about the veggie pizza stuff, and y'all know I'm sort of a pro wrestling nut. By the way, Tyler was with us the other night at our DawgNation Big Game preview over the Marlows in Brookhaven. It was great seeing him for that. Scott McFadden says you're playing yourself. How can you mess up? So Scott brings up a good point. There is a weird thing when you start trying to act where you sort of forget how normal humans behave in a certain situation. Because, and we'll show you this tomorrow. I think, and Jeff and I will sort of break this down. But there's a moment when Jeff, I sort of find his hair gel or his veggie pizza, I think I'm a little too shocked by it. You know what I'm saying? It's like It's one thing to be kind of shocked by it. You kind of want to undersell that there. I may have been a little extra in that moment, I guess, as it were. So that's kind of the thing there. Tim Tatum says, didn't see the video. You can find it over there at DawgNation.com. Jake Frigo brings up a good point that it actually wasn't a pro. This is sort of like the DVD commentary of the Kroger commercial. Jake's the first person that spotted this. I guess Kroger did not have any pro wrestling magazines in stock. Now, there are two ways to take that. One way is nobody reads pro wrestling magazines anymore. The other way is pro wrestling magazines are so popular they'd sold out of them all. So I'm going to take the latter view of that they had just sold out of all their pro wrestling magazines. So we had to use the Men's Health magazine as kind of the stand-in, and I sort of thought we kept it out of view. I sort of thought it didn't pop up, but Jake sort of spotted that and realized that was that's what that was. Daniel Beard still making fun of me for wearing the Bama helmet on SEC Country Live the other day. Mark Lewis Johnson says, happy 35th birthday to a Fred Gibson, DGD. How about that for Fred Gibson? A guy who had some great moments in a UGA uniform. I didn't realize it was Fred's birthday today, but 2004 game against LSU comes to mind. 2001 game against Tennessee comes to mind. And the game-winning touchdown in the 2004 Georgia-Florida game. So DGD indeed for Fred Gibson. The only Gator I've ever liked, and the reason why I say that's because Fred Gibson, the pride of Waycross, Georgia, went to Ware County. I would imagine the only high school in Georgia that's the Gators. At least I would hope they're the only high school that's the Gators. Well, let Ware County do that because they are at least in the Okefenokee Swamp. So they kind of come by their Gator name, honestly. But Fred Gibson, the only Gator I care anything for. Scott Murphy says James Cook's going to be a dog. A lot of people believe that, and he'll kind of become a tandem alongside Keith Marshall, Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel. The next group of that's going to be Zamir White, James Cook. I guess your boy DeAndre Swift may say, hey, what about me? Can I be in that group too? Because he's only going to be a sophomore. Michael Morrow says he likes the commercial. He says Jeff and I like the odd couple. Yeah, Jeff and I are pretty odd couple-ish, I would say. We're pretty different in some regards. That probably works out pretty well. I appreciate you liking it and responding. Cody Taylor says, Ware County's his hometown. Nice stuff there. Daniel Yarborough says the Gators should wear those green uniforms again so they won't see the grass stains this weekend. Yeah, that may be that would certainly be fitting for a team. Those those Florida uniforms look about the way that I feel about the Gators. Not very attractive in either regard. Dennis Wood says James Cook announcing tonight at 8 p.m. A couple people weighing in on that. Certainly that would be a big get for the Dogs, and a guy that a lot of folks have circled as a part of the class of the 2018 already. And wouldn't it be interesting to see a little momentum for Georgia kind of rolling into this weekend against Florida? Gary and Christian Gilisano talking about James Cook as well. Alan Verbanchik asking about that. Darian Ford said he liked the Florida uniforms. The uniforms didn't work as well for me, but I understand that some people like them. Hunter Beard says, will we still be doing the show at 10 a.m. tomorrow? Yes, we will still have a 10 a.m. show tomorrow for sure. We'll be all over that. Chris Thompson says he checks in from the hometown of Grayson Lambert in Jessup, Georgia. Darian C. Daniel says, will the teams wear each home jersey like they have done before? Yeah, I guess that did happen where Georgia wore its red and Florida wore its blue. I haven't heard anything about that this year. My guess is, I believe that Florida is the home team this year. Am I right about that? And my guess is that Georgia will wear the white. Daniel Beard says, where are we going to be setting up at on Saturday? Can we show the tailgate information one more time here? Starting at 10 a.m. on Saturday, we're going to be, it's the touchdown lot. It's part of the tailgaters parking. That's a big group of parking lots. It's the touchdown lot. It's right there off Bryan Street near Gate 6 is where we're going to be. And we're going to be there starting at 10 a.m. Dixie Vodka Tasting Bar, that's for those 21 and up. We'll have 4 televisions. Jeff and I will watch a lot of those early games with you. And we've got the red Gator Hater t-shirts we're going to be giving away. And I can't believe how many people have already reached out with these Gator Hater t-shirts. These things are going to go fast. We're going to try to give them to our Dog Nation folks who come on by. So let's do that on Saturday with you. That's where we're going to be. And even if we run out of shirts, I'd love to see you. And as Hannah reminds me here on our screen, Friday night, we're also going to be out and about as well, downtown Jacksonville at Dos Gatos with the folks from Dixie Vodka, the South's best tasting vodka. We're going to be there for you for the big event there, Dos Gatos, 123 East Forsyth Street in Jacksonville for that. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Starting at 8 p.m., we'll kind of go to question mark on that one, as they say on the party invitations. But we'll have a good time with you there on Friday night. Lee Bridges says, never been so confident in a win since 2014. I think a lot of Georgia fans feel that way, although the 2014 game did not go the way a lot of Georgia fans wanted to. D.L. Sutton referencing some old pro wrestling names. D.L., I'd certainly like hearing about those names. Bobby Robinson says the Dog's going to be ready. Kirby Smart set the tone. A lot of Georgia fans would probably think that's going to be true, that Kirby Smart, we don't know what privately is being said. We heard the story this week of the invitation for Georgia players who had beaten Florida to stand up, and really no one in the room is standing up, even guys working in the program who went to Georgia. How many of those guys could stand up to say they were part of a victory against Florida? We know what the history of this rivalry has been. We know the negativity that's sort of centered around this rivalry. We kind of get all of that, and I believe that Kirby Smart probably is uniquely equipped as a coach to kind of go in there and talk about how to change that, to talk about how to get that done. I think that's I think that's probably true. Paul Ashmore giving me the frowning face, but the Gator Hater T-shirts being out of stock. Yeah, the black shirts are all sold out, and we knew we were not going to be able to get another shipment of those in before the game, so we didn't even try. It's just one of those things with like the logistics and the shipping and the getting them stocked. They told me back in September that once these sold, they weren't going to be able to get any more. And we also knew we wanted to do the red one for the game against Florida, but this is where I think our sponsors have come in and done a great job. What Dixie Vodka and Kroger and Marlowe's Tavern and R.S. Andrews said is, hey, what if instead of selling these things for $25, what if we pay the $25 and you can put our logo in the back, and then you can give the shirts away for free. Let the DawgNation Daily viewer and listener actually be able to get this thing for free. And I said, that's a great idea. I mean, there's nothing I'd love more than be able to give, especially the true Gator haters, to be able to give our folks something for free as a gift, courtesy of our sponsors. What a great opportunity that is. Now, they'll never be enough, right? I mean, there's always going to be a limited supply, and the same thing is true with the red Gator Hater T-shirt as well. I mean, these things, we have a few hundred of these deals, but when they're gone, they're gone. But I think it's awesome that somebody stepped up and said, let us pay for them, and you can give them away for free. I think that's a really cool thing. Roger Price checking in from Folkestone, Georgia, home of the Bailey brothers. Boy, that's a great tandem of UGA siblings. An unbelievable group. Kevin Royster says, I'll bet you 20 against a Gator Hater T-shirt on the point spread. Jennifer Korn says, as someone who lives in Florida, I can wear a Gator Hater T-shirt year-round. Jennifer, that's a nice thing to hear. And I've essentially sort of adopted that policy, at least for this week. I guess I've worn a Gator Hater T-shirt every day so far this week. The red, the black. I'll be back in red again tomorrow, so I'm trying to do my part here in the state of Georgia as well. But we appreciate you representing down there in the state of Florida. Tim Harrell asks a good question. Why do commentators always say, what if Georgia loses a close game to Bama? They never say it the other way around. And, Tim, I hope you noticed that when I've talked about this in SEC Country Live, I have tried to pay equal time to both these things. Now, what the neutral observer might say is that Georgia's going to be about a 2-touchdown underdog to Alabama, at least based on the numbers that are out there right now. So they may say that an Alabama win's more likely than an Alabama loss. But, I don't view as an impossibility that Georgia couldn't go out there and win that game against Alabama on Saturday, or if they were to play in that first Saturday in December. So I'm right there with you on that both scenarios need to be looked at. Not just Alabama beating Georgia and Georgia getting in as a one-loss team. They would be the underdog in the game, therefore losing. But also the flip side, where Georgia pulls the upset over Alabama. It's the SEC champion. And all of a sudden you're looking at Alabama as the one-loss team trying to get in. And here's where things get kind of fun. And y'all know that I'm in some degree sort of addicted to kind of like the hysteria and the debate around college football. I just like the craziness of it all. This is where things get crazy. If Georgia was a one-loss team, it would actually have a decent case to be made for making the college football playoff. It would have beaten Auburn on the road and Notre Dame on the road. But what do you have to go with Alabama's road win at Auburn? You're going to give them credit for the LSU game? Maybe. You're going to give them credit for the Florida State game? Well, Florida State may have been the top 5 team when they played, but Florida State's record by the end of the season is not going to be that impressive. And the selection committee has a way of sometimes not always not always honoring stuff like that. I mean, I think it's a weird scenario in which, while you think of Alabama as being the name brand, the kind of team that the selection committee would give a little bit of a lenient case to, the truth is a one-loss Georgia non-SEC champion actually has a better case for the college football playoff than maybe Alabama would. But I agree with the overall sentiment of the commenter that, hey, let's give Georgia a chance to win that SEC championship game were it to get there, because I think they absolutely could win the game. Dustin Goodwin says, I wish they would come out with the black helmets on. Come on, Dustin. Come on. Now, you have every right to your opinion, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in the comment section that agree with you. But in a weird way, the worst moment for me in the Georgia-Florida rivalry was that year, and I believe it was 2009, when Georgia came out dressed in those black helmets and those black pants and looking like, the G was still there, but it didn't look like Georgia G. It just had the wrong color scheme, and it got, beat up from the word go. I mean, really, it was the 2009 alternate uniform that was almost more embarrassing than the 2008 versus Alabama. At least that was the true black jersey in keeping with what Georgia had done before. I mean, this was a total roll of the dice, grasp at straws, whatever metaphor you want to use. That's what that 2009 thing felt like to me. Just an awful, awful, awful experience. And y'all know, I mean, I'm 1,000 years old. You watch that Kroger video when I lean down like that, and you can see my bald head. You can tell just how old and what a fuddy-duddy I probably am. And so I know that, the younger, cooler, hipper people in our audience are like, let's wear a different uniform every week. I mean, I get that sentiment exists in college football. I like Georgia in the silver breeches and the red, and I certainly don't have very fond memories of those black helmets against Florida, but I'll acknowledge a lot of people probably would like to see some more of that kind of stuff. Lee Bridges says, leave the uniform alone. Billy Carey says, Warner Robbins checking in, home of our favorite dog, Jake Fromm. Me and my dad listen every morning. Love your show, B.A. Hey, Billy, thanks for checking in, and I appreciate you listening to that, Warner Robbins, you and your dad, too. I love the idea of, a father-son connecting through some of this kind of stuff because, for me, that's what it was also, about for me as well growing up. My dad was a big Georgia fan, kind of got me involved in this. My grandfather, his dad, taking me to games all those years. I wouldn't be where I am now doing the stuff that I'm doing now if it wasn't for my family connection. I didn't graduate from Georgia. I graduated from Georgia State. My degree's, doesn't say the University of Georgia. I wasn't a good enough student to get into Georgia. But, Georgia was always a part of just what I was doing growing up, and it's that family connection for me that made that so. So it's kind of cool to see you and your dad hanging out watching this together. Ed Pollock says, bring back the black bridge. He says, I'm sorry, I can't read. He says, bring back the red breeches. And I have to admit something here. When I was a kid, speaking of growing up, I didn't like the red breeches because I felt like Georgia lost a lot of times when they were wearing the red breeches. What I didn't realize then that I know now is that was just Georgia playing on the road, and road games are hard to win even back then. But when you go back and see some of those old photos of the red, breeches on the road, I got to admit, they do look pretty cool. So while I am, for the most part, a traditionalist with the silver breeches both home and away, there is a part of me that would say if Georgia did sort of pop out those red pants one day, I probably wouldn't hate that. But if they did bring out the red breeches for a road game, I know we're going like deep dive into uniforms here, which some of y'all don't like, but somehow we've kind of gotten off on this tangent. The reason why I'd be hesitant to say, yeah, let's buy some red pants and wear them for a road game, it'd be 5 minutes later that somebody's wanting to wear the red at home, and then let's wear the black jersey with the red pants, and then all of a sudden Georgia's like every other team. So this is one of those things that's sort of like a slippery slope. Away game with a red helmet, white jersey, red pants would be pretty cool, but pretty soon it's red pants with a silver jersey and red pants with a black jersey, and then red on red, red jersey, red pants, black helmet. I mean, all of a sudden now you got 9,000 uniforms, and you're essentially no different than Maryland at that point in time. No offense to my buddy Michael, who is a Maryland grad, but Maryland wears a different uniform every single Saturday. Josh Manning bringing up the James Cook situation again. He's announcing tonight at 8 p.m. What's the word on where he's going? Well, I bet if I were to ask, see those thumbs up that start to scroll across your screen? That, to me, is the only sort of predictor you need. You don't need 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball for this one. My guess is the thumbs up that you'll see come across your screen here in a moment. That's a lot of Georgia fans who I think are going to tell you they feel pretty good about the Cook situation tonight. Now, nothing's ever in the bag. Obviously, nothing happens until it happens. But I think there's some reason to be confident when it comes to James Cook. First of all, go back and read what Jeff wrote from Cook's mom, who talked about how much she loved the official visit that Cook took to Georgia. Cook took, a little hard to say, but now Cook himself played his cards close to the vest. He kind of wanted to, play a little coy on that, which is his right. But the moment that Cook kind of fell out of, love with Florida State, at that point in time, Georgia did seem like the real odds-on favorite. While there was some, discussion of, and by the way, the thumbs up are still kind of rolling across here, but while Louisville kind of popped up here for a moment, there was a thought that Florida might pop up for a moment. I mean, Georgia has been sort of viewed as the leader here for a while, and if Georgia could get Cook, what an addition that would be to kind of put nation's number 1 running back with nation's number 3 running back. Cook, a very different player from White. Cook, a guy that's a little bit more of a speed guy. Probably compares, if you want to look at a guy on the Georgia roster right now, as many of you are aware, he's probably a little bit more like Sony Michel than anybody else, although I would say that Michel has proven to be a traditional running back too. I mean, Michel met with the media yesterday. It was pretty funny. He was talking about trucking that guy for Missouri the other night. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, he's not a slot receiver. He can lower his shoulder and deliver a boom. We did that against Missouri, and in 2015, Michel had 1,300 yards rushing. So Michel proved he was more than just a speedy running back. When James Cook gets to college, wherever he goes, even if it's Georgia, he's going to have to prove the same kind of stuff. But if you're going to compare him to a Georgia running back, Michel would be the guy that you compare him to. He's obviously the brother of Dalvin Cook, who had a great career at Florida State and gone on to the NFL now. But this would be a big get for Georgia. And what I love is, for most of y'all pay so much attention to recruiting that by the time Cook gets ready to make an announcement, you've been considering the possibility of this for a while. Here's my favorite thing about the mainstream media. This is true for like TV, radio, old school sports writers. Watch the mainstream media's reaction to this if Georgia gets another player tonight. Now, many of y'all have had Cook in your sort of mock class for a while, but the mainstream media is not paying attention to stuff. What they're going to hear is brother of Dalvin Cook, nation's number 3 running back, and there's going to be this whole new narrative wave of, my gosh, what is Kirby Smart doing on the recruiting trail? How is he bringing in so much talent? The world was shocked the other day when Georgia got another 5-star quarterback. Y'all weren't really shocked because you follow this stuff closely. We talk about it on DawgNation Daily all the time, and Jeff writes about it every day at DawgNation.com. Even the Adam Anderson thing, that's not a shock to many of y'all because you're following this closely enough. You knew that Anderson was probably leaning in Georgia's direction. The mainstream media is not following. The mainstream media, if Cook announces for UGA tonight, is going to get another blast of, can you believe Georgia's bringing all these players? And that'll be something kind of fun to see if that does indeed go down. Tim Tatum wants to wear black jerseys on black pants. I mean, Tim, that's not even Georgia to me, but I understand where you're coming from on that. Like 2 summers ago, we got into like a real heated debate about uniforms, and it went on for a long time. This is like way back. This is back when I was doing the podcast by myself in my house. This was not, studio with people helping us. We're on video. This was like just on the podcast when if you said something to me, I had to wait till like the very next day to say something back to you. But we had on like this 3-day tangent about the uniforms that Georgia was supposed to wear, and at the time, I just sort of fell on my sword and surrendered and said, some people want alternate uniforms, and I can't fault them for wanting that. It's not the kind of thing I'm going to get mad about, even though my opinion on that's a little bit different. Eric Moody says he believes that Luke Ford is a silent commitment to us. I mean, I think there's reason to believe, the silent commit thing is something that's always a little weird to me, what the definition of that even is. I choose to sort of speak about that in a different way. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that Luke Ford is a strong lean towards Georgia. And I'm even going to believe that even above maybe some of the things that Ford himself has said. So I think there's definitely reason to believe that Ford is a strong lean to Georgia. I don't know that I buy into the notion of silent commit all that much necessarily, but I understand where you're coming from. Oh, we've got to go. We're late. Let me hit just a couple more, and we'll get out of here. Darian Ford says Georgia's lost more in the red jerseys than the white jerseys they have in anything else. That's certainly fair to say that clearly they haven't necessarily been good look for Georgia. Kyle Norton says, do you think that Fromm's going to be able to throw on Florida like he did against Missouri? Here's one of the reasons why I think the answer to that could be yes. Up until the Mississippi State game, that was the best defense that Fromm had seen. He played his best game at that point in the year against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's got a pretty good defense, and yet Fromm was better in that game than he was against Notre Dame, or he was against even Appalachian State, and maybe even against Samford as well. Why was he better against a better defense? Because he was more experienced. The truth is, I don't think Fromm's performance is necessarily dictated by his opponent as much as it's dictated by his comfort level. He's getting more and more comfortable. The stat that I love for Fromm is, and if you listen to the audio today, you can hear Seth and I kind of talk about some of the stat stuff. I like yards per attempt for him much more so than total yards because it speaks to a guy who, when he does throw, he maximizes that opportunity. Watch those yards per attempt numbers for him. September compared to October, way better in October. Late September compared to early September, way better in late September. As the season has progressed, Fromm has gotten better. I don't think he has a bad game against Florida. I really don't. All right, we're late for now. I got to go. We're back tomorrow at 10 a.m. A lot more of your comments. We're going to have, I don't want to tell you too much about this right now, but we're going to have a really fun show, as you would imagine, on the final day before the game against Florida. We're going to try to pull out a lot of stops for you tomorrow and make it a really, really good day. So I hope you'll be with us at 10 a.m. If you can be, 3 p.m. Eastern Time today on the SEC Country Facebook page for SEC Country Live. We'll look forward to seeing you there for that, and I hope you all have a great day.